everyone, this is update for February 21, 2024, day 728 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for February 20 and 19. So I'm gonna start with strategic general updates, and then I'm gonna switch to the walks through the front line. First, I'm gonna start with Russia. So there are some first signs that actually financial sanctions are starting somewhat bite Russia. So some, not some, but Chinese banks, even state-run banks in China, are sort of ceasing their relationship with the sanctioned Russian banks. Similar situation is happening in UAE and also in Turkey. So what this really means is that it's becoming harder, more expensive for Russia as a country to conduct economic operations with the rest of the world. What this literally means is becoming more expensive to export natural resources, because that's the main source of wealth, main source of value add in Russia, and also obviously it's a main source of fuel for the war. This marginally helps Ukraine. It's definitely not sort of changing anything drastically, but it's very clearly headache for Russian political top, obviously economic and financial top. Then there is another interesting news out of Russia. I didn't discuss this much, but Ukrainian military was attacking Russian oil refineries extensively, I would say, in January. And there is actually some, I'd say, quantifiable result. Russian crude oil processing fell by 7%. So the output from oil refineries fell by 7%. What this really means, there is less diesel fuel, gasoline, jet fuel, and so on available. What this also means, this is probably going to be fewer of those crude oil products available to the global market, which obviously will make it tighter overall, and prices probably going to remain firmer than they would otherwise be. I'm not saying that all 7% is attributable to attacks of Ukrainian military, but probably significant percentage of that, probably like 5%, is driven is due to attacks by Ukrainian military. The problem with all of that is that equipment is custom made for those refineries, and a lot of it is imported from, let's say, Germany, Italy, and so on, from Europe, or from let's say, Japan, South Korea. So it's going to be super hard to purchase it, because it's expensive. It's very visible. It's not chips that you can easily smuggle, and it's very easily to sort of hide. In this case, it's, as I stated, it's extremely visible. Plus, you also need some consulting work. Sometimes you need engineering help and so on to install it. So it becomes nearly impossible to quickly and easily repair all of that. So we'll see if this damage is more or less permanent, or let's say semi-permanent. Obviously it's not permanent, because eventually Russia will repair it. But if this sort of damage is, let's say, will last for a year or less than a year, I'll continue tracking that information. Now I'm going to switch to situation in Ukraine. So the I would say decay of power system in Ukraine continues. There's another member of parliament is leaving Ukrainian parliament. He is from the Ukrainian president group. So now the number of Ukrainian members of Ukrainian parliament is dropping under 400. So and as I mentioned before, there are many more who want to leave. This one was sort of able. He used health reasons as excuse, and as typical rats, when they jump the ship, they try to sail to safer place, and so he already announced that he's leaving Ukraine and he's moving to Europe. As I stated before, the rats are jumping the ship because they obviously smell the problem. And then Ukrainian president had the meeting with the members of his group in parliament for the first time since the beginning of war. So this is obviously unusual, extremely unusual event. However, the interesting detail about this is that only 60% of the members of his group showed up to the meeting. His group, he has basically majority in Ukrainian parliament, so he can push whatever decisions he wants, basically on a whim. But however, that majority is becoming sort of slimmer and slimmer, and so on. But it's what this 60% means is that there are fewer and fewer people who are willing to accept him, the Ukrainian president, as legitimate and sort of listen to him. So this is clearly indicating that the collapse of the power system is not far away. I'm not saying it's going to happen in a month, but after it will, if things continue the way they are, that collapse will happen, especially after expiration of Ukrainian president's term, which is formally expiring at the end of March. Technically, there is this power handover period for another, I think, months and a half towards the end of May. But from purely just if strictly legally, his term is over and the end of March, which is obviously basically 1 month left. Probably related to that reason is that Ukrainian president announced large press conference on the February 25th. He's also bringing there all other major players, power players in Ukrainian politics, meaning head of Ukrainian parliament, which obviously his own person, prime minister, head of Ukrainian version of KGB called SBU. So basically all of the people who have power and who he controls. So I'll provide updates on that. This is obviously another extremely unusual event. We'll see, but my, let's say, educated guess is that's going to be a lot ado about nothing, essentially. But remains to be seen what's going to happen there. Now I'm going to switch to walk through the front line, and I'm going to do it in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do it. Starting from very north, so the situation along the state border remains more or less the same. No essential sort of threat of imminent Russian invasion in large with large forces and so on. However, the interesting detail is that Ukrainian top Ukrainian government started preparing for assault on Kyiv, which is capital of Ukraine, and they started laying mines on the basically putting mines on the bridges and so on. So things are getting sort of prepared for potential sort of blow up and creating obstacles for Russian invasion. And at the same time, there is no any let's say imminent or near-term sign of Russian invasion. And I would say the way it's going to happen, if this is where it happened, is going to be probably much later, once there is obvious collapse of Ukrainian army. This is not happening yet. There are a lot of cracks. There are more with sort of every passing week, and there will be even more. But from a Russian perspective, Ukraine is not ripe yet for such invasion. So if things gonna sort of, if let's say I extrapolate this in a straight line, this is probably gonna happen sometime in the summer, probably end of the summer, maybe early fall. So we'll see. But the trend is obviously not going in Ukrainian favor. Now let's move to the situation on the North Lugansk front line. Things here are sort of somewhat back to normal. Russian troops resumed their attacks. This is right now probing attacks towards Kupiansk along this road that leads to Kupiansk. As I stated, they are sort of so far look like more like a probing attacks, but I would not be surprised if Russian command decides to put significant pressure, since now they have it's unclear if they have sort of extra resources that they want to switch from from central Donbass front line to this area. This is big question mark whether they're going to do it at this moment or not. Sort of what is more immediate target for Russian troops. My feeling is that actually pushing west of Donetsk is more sort of pressing goal for Russian army at this point. Now let's and going back to the situation, there are no territorial gains by Russian troops in these attacks here. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. Things here are somewhat quiet in the northern, especially in the northern sector of it is fairly quiet. There's nothing major happening. Even actually, southern one is sort of in a quiet mode. It's probably temporary situation, but so far there's some kind of break, some probably regrouping on the Russian side is happening. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line. Things here are also somewhat quieter, which is sort of natural and normal. Russian command is regrouping, reorganizing, and so on. But they continued pressure. It's obviously not at the same level. West of Avdiivka, and obviously remains to be seen where Russian command is going to pick next area where they're going to put this pressure. As I said before, it doesn't look that Russian command has enough resources to put this kind of tactic in multiple places, so they will need to pick again one location where they're going to do it, and it could be sort of continuation of the push west of Avdiivka, could be straight west of Donetsk towards Krasnohorivka, basically Kurakhove. There could be a lot of sort of goals, and we'll find out sort of in short order, I believe. Then if we move a little bit south, there are Russian attacks in Russian-controlled Maryinka at this point. Russian troops are advancing west. They moving through the village that's next to Maryinka called Georgievka. There are some advances there. Then there's also advances of Russian troops here in this Novomikhailivka salient. They captured village Peremoga. Territorially, it's a small gain, but nevertheless, it's another crack. As I stated, there is very visible cracks appearing in Ukrainian defenses and ability to hold a line in general. Now let's move to the Zaporizhia front line. Things here are somewhat more active. Russian troops are actively trying to basically eliminate this Ukrainian salient around village Roborine. They had very minimal success initially a few days ago, but it's all stalled. So it's essentially basically World War One without really any meaningful advances so far in this area. Doesn't mean that this may change in terms of Ukrainian forces. Ukrainian defenses may crack here as well. We'll see. Now let's move to the situation along Dnipro River. So things here remain more or less the same. Ukrainian forces maintain bridgehead in Krinky despite the statements by Russian Minister of Defense, which are obviously false. It's even false in his own statement because he contradicts himself, stating there are still some Ukrainian forces, yet the bridgehead is eliminated. So the reality is it's not eliminated. That's the reality. Why he made those statements is totally unclear. But it's definitely for sure Russian side would love to eliminate this bridgehead because it's actually, if properly used, could be extremely dangerous situation for the Russian army in Ukraine. Could be, the proverbial needle that killed the monster, basically. But the probability that Ukrainian army will be able to use it in that way are close to zero. So, but nevertheless, they're not zero, and that's what really bothers Russian command and Russian actually political top. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye.